After leading for the majority of the game on Monday, West Virginia lost their sixth straight game, losing 81-77 to Baylor after guard Taz Sherman was concussed after dropping a career-high 29 points. With less than 4 minutes to play, Sherman was out of the game and West Virginia could not recover. We talk Sherman's status going forward, the possible emergence of this team in February, Big 12 tournament scenarios, as well as look at Chris Beard's return to Texas Tech and discuss a couple important dates regarding West Virginia football. This is the BlueGoldSports.com podcast. What's going on? Wesley Shoemaker, Aaron Parker here today on the BlueGoldSports.com podcast. West Virginia with probably the most heartbreaking defeat of the season. Mountaineers led most of the way after the last 5 minutes of the first half, and they just couldn't get it done in the end. Obviously, Taz Sherman going down with a concussion in the last 4 minutes was huge, but in the end, Baylor was too much. Aaron, how's your day going? How are you doing on this Tuesday afternoon, and how do you feel about the Mountaineer loss last night?
I'm okay. I'm feeling a little bit better than I was last evening. It was a tough loss for the Mountaineers, especially after losing 5 straight. With a Baylor team with a couple injuries, they needed that one, and they fought and they played a great game, and just continued heartbreak for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, you speak of those Baylor injuries. West Virginia kind of caught a break heading into things. LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, who combined to score 39 points in their first meeting 2 weeks ago, they were both out with injury, leaving Baylor's guard depth very shallow, I think is the word I'd use there. And it gave West Virginia a shot on a night where they're coming off a game a day and a half ago. It gave them a shot on the road, and I think they showed that throughout most of the game. But in the end, I think it was Baylor stars stepping up when Taz was off the floor that made the difference.
Yeah, in Morgantown, there was no Akinjo, so we saw LJ Cryer kind of go off. So with him being sidelined, I kind of figured, Akinjo being the Arizona transfer, he's averaging double digits a game. I figured he'd be good. I didn't know he'd be 25 points good. Unfortunately, he was left open a lot. Their big men were good. Chamwa Chachwa again. 6 or 7 from the field. He ate the Mountaineers up last time in Morgantown, and Sohan did not play Morgantown. He came to play. He had a couple big shots, and yeah, their stars got the job done.
Yeah. What I'm going to go to first here is Taz. Last 3 minutes and change, Taz was out of the ball game. Taz looked like he was trying to drive to his right, switch hands, gets hit on the head. Should have been a foul call. John Higgins right there, no whistle there, to a lot of Mountaineer fans' dismay. And then you kind of see things not unravel even. You got to give West Virginia credit. They hung in there with the limited offense and limited roster depth they had, but they just couldn't get it done. And I think losing Sherman when he had a career high 29 and he was making everything left, right, falling away, going to the basket, shot fake, every type of shot was going in for Taz. I just personally feel if you have Sherman there down those last 3 minutes and change, you win this game if you're West Virginia.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sherman was amazing. During this 5-game skid, he hasn't been too good coming off COVID, and that's what you need. A fifth-year senior stepping up. He's from Missouri City, Texas, and he comes out and he plays his butt off. He had a couple turnovers, but he's just making everything. That's what he needed to get back going to vintage Taz, and to see him go down with about 4 minutes or three and some change to go, that was heartbreaking. I felt that it should have been Taz leading his team to victory in the final couple minutes, as opposed to Meyer and Akinjo for Baylor. The John Higgins saga continues for Mountaineer fans. Not a dirty play, but he gets.
It's a foul. It's a dirty
yeah,
play,
yeah, he gets the shot to the jaw.
It looked like a flagrant foul. That's a flagrant 1 foul by the looks of and how it works.
Yeah, as a fan, I thought that as well. Looking back at the tape, it's got to be some kind of whistle. He gets bonked in the jaw, and then nothing happens. Baylor goes 5-on-4 and scores from it. It's unacceptable.
Yeah, and I think Taz. The story was Taz. The first 37 minutes, the story was Taz Sherman and how he was just absolutely just putting this team on his back and willing them to a possible upset victory in Waco. But then the story became what happened without Taz, and that's kind of what I want to get into because another a big example is Matthew Mayer, who scored 20 points 2 weeks ago in Morgantown, didn't get anything going until Taz was off the floor, and then in those last 3.5 minutes, he scored all nine of his points, and just completely changed the game without Sherman on the floor.
Yep, that's what big time players do. And Meyer seems to love playing the Mountaineers. 20 in Morgantown this year, 18 in Morgantown last year, including probably double digits in the second half. Makes a lot of big shots. You argue he's one of the worst players on the floor last night. It was like, I think he was 0-6 from the field at one point, missed all 4 free throws. He just wasn't playing good. And then, of course, I mean, in the final stretch, he's making everything. He got multiple offensive boards, put it up. That's just what big time players do, and it's frustrating to watch considering I thought he was really bad. And if Baylor was going to win, I thought it'd be a guy like a Kenju making every shot in the final couple minutes. It was a Kenju and then Meyer. So a little bit frustrating there.
For me, until those last 3.5 minutes, it's almost like Mayer, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, wasn't even on the floor. He seemed to just not be there. Like Baylor's offense wasn't going through him; it was going through Akinjo and Sohan, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And when you have a guy like Matthew Mayer and he's cold throughout the game, obviously in the back of your mind you think, all right, he's going to get his at some point because he's just that good of a player. But I think another thing that hurt West Virginia was just Baylor's overall talent. You saw, I just think the talent of Baylor just wear down, wear down, wear down, and then without Taz, your best player, it's just you can only do so much without your best player on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. The talent of Baylor's there. They got guys on the bench that can step up and play, like Bonner from Fairmont State. They got, Akinjo was open, scored 25. He proved he can score at Arizona last year. They got Kendall Brown. People are calling him a lottery pick. Only scored 9, but that's 9 that probably WVU is not going to get. So they're talented. They're deep. Big guys. Tom Chacho is always coming to play against WVU. So yeah, they got talent. And with WVU without Taz for the last 3 minutes, it was a tall task, and they just couldn't overcome it.
Yes, and what I also want to say is I think the first half, especially those last 10 minutes, might have been the best 10 minutes of complete basketball that we have seen from this team in I don't know how long. I feel everyone who needed to step up and make a shot was making shots. They were finding Taz, they were finding open guys. And then on defense, they were active, they were moving, they were switching, they were rotating, they were gang rebounding, which we've asked this team to do so often. And unfortunately, that hard work could not pay off. The Mountaineers were leading at halftime. They were leading the entire second half, except until those last 4 minutes without Taz.
Yep. Yeah, they were. They got a lot of contribution from other guys in the first half. Saw guys like Seth Wilson step up, make a shot, and then put up one at the buzzer that went in. It just felt like it was WVU's night. And it just felt like it was the Mountaineers' night to break this losing skid, make a tournament push. And yet it just fell by the wayside, unfortunately. I think WVU found what they wanted to by playing small ball. JB was out there for 29 minutes. Gabe was out there for 27. You got Kobe Johnson a lot more looks. Well, Malik Curry didn't play much, but you got Polycap and Cottrell and even Kerrigan to an extent was just they sat down. They were on the bench for most of this, the run on the second half. Hugs decided to go small ball, and I thought it worked for most of the game.
I think it did work, and I think though I don't want to go down too far of a rabbit hole with the referee situation here, but I think where it hurts obviously is going to be on the glass, and it's going to hurt there every single time. But everyone's probably heard Huggins' frustration now. It's 4:30 on Tuesday afternoon. This game ended at 11 o'clock last night. I just want to read you, Aaron, what Huggins said after the game. Just first about Taz. He said, I'm better off not talking about that. I'll get in trouble. Clearly, something happened. He's lying on the floor. He's lying on the floor. He may have been unconscious at the beginning. I'm not sure. And they continue to play on, and we played 5-on-4. Didn't stop the game. Didn't stop and go look at it. Didn't stop the game at all. I think Huggins' frustration is valid. His best player on the road against a top 10 opponent just got hit in the head. No whistle was blown, and they continued to play on as if my shoe was untied. Um, Obviously, injuries should be taken seriously, but I also think there should have been a foul call there. And I think a lot down the stretch, you saw West Virginia players complain. I think Matthew Meyer, he pushed. He got a rebound, pushed. I believe it was JB down low, and JB looks at the ref and like makes a push sign, and there was no call, obviously, but the officiating was questionable. That Taz call, I think, is highly questionable. I think that deserves to be looked at possibly by the league office, how questionable that is. But you can't catch every break. Mountaineers did catch some breaks, but in the end, the officials didn't seem. I'm not blaming this loss on the officials by any means, because that's not what should happen, and that's not what either team or the officials deserve. But I'm saying they had an impact on the game, whether they meant to or not.
They did have an impact on the game. If you're just looking at the Taz footage, it's bad. It's the best player on WVU's team. It's not a clean play at all, and it goes 5-on-4 for a Baylor bucket. Somebody needs to be held accountable, but we know that won't happen. But that's just the facts of the matter. And yeah, I don't think the loss was all officiating. While I do think people need to be I think some footage needs to be looked over with the Big 12 like officials and all that. But I think WVU just couldn't get a break. I've seen it a million times, but balls were bouncing every single time in Baylor's favor. Anytime there was a rebound, WVU's not a good rebounding team, but any kind of loose ball went to Baylor. And it's just the Taz play in general. You got a guy who's been playing his butt off all year, been playing great all year, and then can't really get back from COVID. Getting COVID in the first place is a bad break. And then once he gets going, boom, concussion. That's tough.
It's extremely tough. And for a West Virginia team that is in now pure desperation mode, if they want to make March, it's not, it's almost worst case scenario. Obviously, worse things could technically happen, but when you don't know the availability of your best player as you come home for two must-win games against two top 25 teams, that is a hard pill to swallow, considering you had the number 8 team, arguably one of the top 3 teams, if we're being honest, based on skill and things of that nature. When you had that team on the ropes last night, and now you could be looking at a stretch where you've lost 6 straight. You have 2 top 25 teams coming into your building. If you're without your best player for 1 or 2 of those or both of those games, you could be looking at 8 straight losses, kiss and march goodbye.
Yep. Mountaineers could be in trouble. What I saw last night was a lot of fight. I saw something that signified to me that they wanted to turn the ship around right now. They needed that win. They couldn't get it. Bad break with Taz. If he's out, that's not good. There's no moral victories at this point. It's not like, oh, we almost went to Waco and pulled out a win. No, they have to, there's no moral victories at this point. They need wins, and they got 2 at home with Texas Tech, Iowa State. I know they're good teams, but you got to pick them up. And if Taz is out for that, you could be looking at kiss and march goodbye, unfortunately. Don't know what his status is, but they're must-win games, not, WVU has to play good and then they'll figure it out. No, they got to win now, especially with 6 straight losses.
As far as Taz's status goes, he did tweet last night, late last night, early this morning. He did tweet a thumbs up on Twitter. Obviously, that could mean a whole host of things. It could mean he's okay. It could mean his concussion isn't bad. He could mean his head's not hurting, or he could just be – he could be saying a lot of things. Obviously, no one knows. We probably won't know until Huggins talks on Friday. And until then, he might not even know. It might be up to a game time decision. depending on the severity of the concussion. One thing I want to talk about, going back to your small ball point, is how efficient West Virginia was from the field. Obviously, when you get Taz to go 6 for 11 from three, that'll help your cause. But the Mountaineers shot 54% from the field, 40% from three against one of the better defensive teams in the country. And yes, they were without two players, and yes, they were playing a lot of new guys on the floor. But I still think there is something to be said about having success on the road in a tough environment after a quick turnaround, after losing five straight. Everything that went into this, I think all of the different variables, and then you come out and shoot above 50% and give yourself a chance to win. Obviously, as you said, Aaron, no moral victories in January and February, but maybe this team is starting to find what they need to find if they want to get actual victories instead of the moral ones.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. They shot well in a tough environment against the number 8 team in the country. 11 of 27 from beyond the arc. That's great. Taz was making all kinds of shots with defenders in his eye. Sean McNeil got going finally. I know he made a couple 3-pointers. One was like falling down.
That 3-pointer that he made, it was like it was almost like it was a circus shot. He was falling away, kind of. It looked like he just had one hand on the ball, just kind of chucks it up there. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm looking, I'm like, that has no chance of going in. It's going to be 30 seconds going down the other way, and then it goes in, and it's like sometimes that's what shooters need. They just need to see one go in. They just need to have the miracle shot go in, and hopefully that can carry over, especially with the possibility of Taz being out.
Yeah, I've learned that when Sean rises for a shot, no matter what it is, it's always got a chance of going in. I've seen some of his circus shots, and when he pulled up for that, I had a feeling it was going to go in, and I couldn't believe it. He almost fell when he landed and still made it. But yeah, the Mountaineers making shots is big time. If Taz is out, there's got to be consistent scores. It just makes me wish that kind of shooting performance would have happened in the Coliseum against Oklahoma. They couldn't run an offense, and now they go down to Baylor. I know Baylor was down a couple players, but they played great. They shot the ball good. It wasn't just Taz and Sean. It wasn't just like Malik getting to the foul line. They scored, and they're going to have to do that at home for both of these games coming up.
Yeah, going to your point of you wish he did it against Oklahoma. Because of the results, it almost feels like a wasted performance. Because of West Virginia ending up with another tally in the loss column, it almost feels like, well, dang, he did all of this. The Mountaineers played their butts off. Defensively, they hung with them. Offensively, they shot lights out, and it's still a loss. And I think that also then goes to show you the talent discrepancy between this West Virginia team and that Baylor team. Because West Virginia almost played their best game they could have. Obviously, they turned the ball over too much. Obviously, they didn't rebound like they should have. Obviously, some things with the refs and whistles didn't go their way. But this team played a really darn good game and didn't get rewarded. And I think that's the scariest thing about a team like Baylor is you could play your best game. They could not have two of their starters, and you could still lose.
Yep. They played a great game, and they still couldn't beat them. That's how good Baylor is. They're number 8 for a reason. They're down 2 players, and they can still be a hot shooting WVU team. WVU fans have seen that entirely too much, where it's like, these kids played their hind ends off. They, nobody picked them to win, and they deserve to win. Now, do they get a win? No. It's frustrating. It happens all the time, and it happened again last night. But Baylor's good. You got to give them credit. They're not going to go away just because Cryer and Flagler are out. And Flagler, is experienced. They're not just going to go away and stop running offense because Flagler's gone. No, they're going to play. And it just felt like a game that WV deserved and they couldn't get. And, that's heartbreaking for this group because they so desperately need a win.
Exactly. And one thing I think that's been consistent with this losing streak has been West Virginia's defensive play. This season, early in the season, when this team got out to the 13-2 start, looked like a top 25 team, looked to be trending toward a top 5-6 seed line. in the tournament, it's because they built their identity on defense. But one stat I want to read to you, Aaron, is West Virginia's last 6 games now. And I want to read to you opponents' field goal percentage. So Kansas shot 51.4%. Baylor the first time 46.7. Texas Tech, the lowest of the string of losses at 40.7. Oklahoma shot 51.1%. Arkansas, not known for their lights out offense, shot 45%, just a tick over. And last night, Baylor shot 48.4% from the field. You've got to get better on defense. You've kind of put your stamp, this is what we are as a defensive team. And when you are letting 5 out of your last 6 opponents shoot at least 45% from the field, and you let a poor shooting Texas Tech team shoot 40%, and you let a Arkansas team that's not known for their offense shoot 45% from the field, that's trending in the wrong direction. And it's a trend that is, unfortunately for West Virginia, becoming a reality and becoming more who they are compared to what they were a month ago.
Yeah, unfortunately, WVU's defense has not been very good. It seems like every time you look up, somebody that's been struggling, maybe an individual, if they're struggling, they just got to get against the Mountaineers and they're good. For example, Kenjo, but not even him. Jalen Wilson for Kansas he was really struggling. He came in and scored 20 against WVU. McCormick was struggling before WVU, and he had a field day. Arkansas wasn't scoring the ball efficiently at all, and they were scoring left and right. It's a struggle right now, and they're not where they need to be defensively. Akinjo was their best player last night, and that was obvious. And yet it felt like Akinjo was wide open so many times. Keedy was on him. Keedy would get screened, and then Akinjo's wide open from deep, and he's knocking it down. Or he's wide open from foul line extended area. He's knocking it down. So, shooters have to, closeouts have to be better. Got to get on shooters better. And, WVU's defense has a lot of holes in it right now, and they need to patch them up really soon.
Let's be honest, too. Baylor went 13-25 from the line. If they make, I don't know, 5 of those, 6 of those, this game's a whole different story. West Virginia also, on the other hand, went 14-23 from the line. Their worst free throw shooting performance in a while as well. And I wonder if both these teams playing Saturday, day and a half of rest, had something to do with it. But either way, you got to clean that up if you're Baylor. And you also got to clean that up if you're West Virginia, realistically speaking. One thing I want to get to, going back to your idea of small ball. Let's say Taz can't go on Saturday. What do you think's the most ideal lineup? Because if you look at it last night, Isaiah only played for 11 minutes. Polycat played for 3. Damon played for 9. Those are your 3 bigs coming into the year at the 5 there. I'd say Gabe is more of a 4 who can play the 5 than a true 5 anyway. So those are your 3 5s. And they combined for 23 minutes between 3 guys. Then also, if you look at it, Malik Curry, 3 minutes. Obviously, if Taz ends up being out, I do think he gets more play. But I would assume Kobe Johnson gets elevated into the starting lineup, and you see a Keedy, Kobe, JB, McNeil, and Cottrell lineup. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I would think Curry's the best option at guard, but I think Kobe Johnson's going to start. I think Hugs likes to stick to his guns.
I mean, ideally, obviously, Sherman starts, but yeah, I get
you. Yeah, if he doesn't, Hugs likes to stick to his guns. He likes to bring guys off the bench. Gabe doesn't start. He likes him better off the bench. I think he's going to do that with Curry. He did that with guys like Tariq Phillip, Jaysean Page. They could have easily been starters, but they weren't. So I think Kobe Johnson's going to get the start. I thought he played pretty well against Arkansas. I thought he gave the Mountaineers good minutes last night. Didn't shoot particularly well, but he made a shot. I thought he was moving the ball around a little bit. He's got to get looks. Keedy's going to have to step up. I thought Keedy was not very good last night at all.
Yeah,
So that's what you're
Keating
looking
ended the
at.
game
And
minus 14, which was
yeah,
second worst to JB's minus 16. And Keating was on the floor for 31 minutes, excuse me, which was third most. Basically, he was a minute under Taz. So if you're looking at it, Keating's supposed to be there to guard your best player, but he's also got to make some shots. He finished with 3 points, all coming out the line. That's just not what you need from him.
yeah, I agree. Keedy, I thought, I know he tries on defense. He's tough on defense. I didn't think he looked very good on the defensive end last night either. Seemed like he was always behind when Akinji was stepping up for a shot. So he's gonna have to play better. And if you're going small ball, JB played 29 minutes, Gabe played 27. JB's gonna have to start making shots. His shots don't look good at all right now. He's not in rhythm. They kind of look like JB's shots from the beginning of last season before he saw a couple go in. So he's got to get open and see a couple go down because he's gonna have a big ask of him because he's gonna play a lot again, assuming Taz is gonna be out.
Yeah, going back to your Keating point, where was Malik Curry last night? 3 minutes, three personal fouls, 0-2 from the free throw line, did not record a shot. For a short time there against Kansas and then against Baylor, Malik Curry was outplaying Keating by a lot. Not just on the score sheet, but in minute wise. What do you think's going on with that? Do you think he's hurt, Aaron? Do you think it's a decision of Huggins felt like Keedy was the better option on defense last night and on offense, or do you feel like maybe Huggins talking the last few weeks, last week really, especially about he's gonna. It's not about who starts and who finishes games. It's now about who's going to get the most meaningful minutes. Do you think that's what it's about, or what are your thoughts?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I hope he's not hurt. I don't think he is. I
I
think
mean, he looked
Hugs on.
fine. Like he looked totally
Yeah,
normal, but
I
obviously we
think
didn't do everything.
I think Hugs wanted to stick with Keedy for whatever reason. I mean, Keedy, Keedy plays hard and doesn't need to be subbed out a whole lot. He gives you stuff on the defensive end. He didn't give it to you last night. But him coming off an 18-point performance, I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess Hugs wanted to stick with him. Again, he can run up and down the floor, put pressure on the ball, and not really get winded that much. So that's the only thing I got for you. I'm not really sure. Malik has been given the Mountaineers better minutes overall usually, but it just wasn't there last night. Got in foul trouble like he did against Texas Tech, and I don't know.
Yeah. It's just odd to me. I mean, he's been efficient. He's been scoring the ball. He's been getting to the line, being active on defense, and I feel like that's what you ask of him. And I just don't know what that was about. And I feel like we'll find out because if Taz is out, you're going to need a guard to step up. And if Huggins doesn't go to him and say he goes to a Seth Wilson and plays Kobe, Seth, Keedy, Sean as your kind of four main rotation guards, I don't think I'm missing any guards there, am I? No. If he kind of plays those guys there and you see Malik still get under 8 minutes, under 6, 7, like in that 6 to 11 range, compared to his normal 15 to 20, 25 range, I feel like was what he was at. I feel like that's going to be a bigger story then.
Yeah, if Taz is out and Malik gets under 10 minutes, then he would be considered in Hugs' doghouse. I I don't think he is. I think that was a Hugs decision last night. Be interested to see how it plays out. I hope Taz gets to start the next game, but if he doesn't, Curry is your best option historically to score from the guard position off the bench or just somebody to score besides Sean and Taz at the guard position. So if Taz were to be out and Malik wouldn't play that much, then there's a problem.
Yeah, and I do think that's going to be one of the big storylines going into Saturday if Taz is unavailable is what happens with Malik Curry. Another thing I want to get to as far as West Virginia is looking at the state of things in terms of their confidence moving forward. I kind of really want to hit on the frustration of Sean McNeil. Post game yesterday, McNeil basically said everyone in this building's frustrated. Obviously, losing sucks. Obviously, losing is hard, but it seems to me since conference play has started, teams have zeroed in on Sean and Taz, and Taz is still able to find success because he can create his own shot. But I feel like Sean has struggled the most out of the pair because he can't create his own shot. He relies on others to get a look for him. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on, do you think, obviously Sean is frustrated. Obviously everyone is frustrated, but how much more frustrated Sean probably is because of his limited opportunity on offense because he cannot create for himself.
I would think he'd be one of the most frustrated ones out there because of that. I was close to the action for the Oklahoma game. He was getting face guarded pretty much the whole game, wasn't getting open. As you said, he struggles to get open for himself. So, with WVU's kind of stagnant offense at times, I feel like for Big 12 teams, the scouting report wouldn't be all that hard. It's, zero in on Taz Sherman. He's their scorer. McNeil can absolutely kill you if he gets hot. So face guard him. Don't let him get open. That's the big two. And then maybe, I don't know, respect Jalen Bridges from beyond the arc. And then after
Respect
that, you
Jalen
don't have
Bridges,
any.
but then again,
Yeah.
you also have to keep in mind Jalen Bridges has kind of gone silent in
Yeah.
these
He
last
hasn't.
games.
Yeah. But, if you're scouting, he can make it. Maybe Malik Curry just don't make sure he doesn't go left. And then outside of that, there's not many Mountaineers that can hurt you offensively. So I think that's why somebody like Sean is getting double teamed, getting consistently face guarded, and it's hard for him to get open.
Yeah, and then again, on back to the JB, Huggins did say post game yesterday he's dealing with a hand injury, but obviously it's Thursday, February 1st. Every college basketball team in America is dealing with having guys being banged up, having guys fighting through injuries, and that's just kind of the nature of the sport. Um, but I do agree with you that teams, if you can take either Taz or Sean out, um, it's kind of makes it easy. It's hard to say easy because no win's easy, but it makes things relatively speaking easy for teams to beat West Virginia. Um, I feel like West Virginia's best games are when Taz starts getting hot. Teams are like, all right, we got to move on to Taz. And then Sean's like, okay, leave me open, bang, bang, bang. Or other way around, Sean's going bang, 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 bang. Okay, let's double Sean here, kick it to Taz. Taz creates for himself and gets points.
Yep. I agree with that. When you face a team like, let's say, Texas Tech on the road, they got the top defense in America. So they're shutting down both. I mean, I think Taz scored a good bit against Texas Tech, but they have capable defenders, athletic defenders that can shut down both. So once you get past, if you're getting past Sean McNeil and letting him struggle, and Taz, isn't scoring 30 on you, you're doing pretty good defensively, and that's a success in their book. And Baylor didn't do quite as good of a job last night as they kind of let both of those guys get hot. If Sean and Taz are both getting hot, then you've kind of failed defensively. But like a game like Oklahoma, both guys were getting face guarded the whole game. They didn't let Malik Curry get downhill, and they did a good job stopping the Mountaineer offense because once you take out those two players early, they're kind of done for.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. And obviously it's not like you can go get someone off the street. You are who you are at this point and you've got to adjust. One more thing that's big that I noticed in the Baylor game was careless turnovers. Whether it's a baseline out of bounds play, bad entry passes, forcing passes that just aren't there, just mistakes that are small mental errors that add up over the course of a 40-minute ball game. I feel West Virginia made a lot of, and I do also feel like Taz Sherman, albeit he has the ball in his hands more than anyone on this team, did make some errors that I'm just not used to and accustomed to seeing Taz make. I think it was in the first half. He forced an entry. He just kind of threw it in there, and Baylor just had to reach around and poke it out, and it's going the other way. And then on the next possession down, he has a turnover. And then there's a 2-on-1 later in the game between it's like Sean Taz and one Baylor defender. Sean's foot's out of bounds. Those are just kind of the plays that I'm not even talking about beating the number 8 team in the country. I'm talking about winning a basketball game against no name state in November.
Yeah.
You can't make those kinds of plays, expect to win, and then when you're adding into it that you're playing a top 10 team on the road in January, you can't make those mistakes and still be able to get wins.
Yep. You're totally right on that. It's WVU. They have historically been known to shoot themselves in the foot. And this team is no different. Taz has had some bad turnovers over this losing streak. While he played good, he had another 5 last night. Sean had 4 turnovers himself. And like you said, there was one where he got the ball 3-point line, and you could tell he's kind of like going to attack baseline, but his foot was out of bounds, and it wasn't even really close. His foot, he just didn't know where he was on the floor. That's the little errors that can't happen. And like Hug says, if you feel so inclined to turn it over, kick it into the 5th row of the stands so we can set up our defense. WVU doesn't seem to do that. When they turn it over, it seems to always lead out to a break or some kind of 2-on-1, 3-on-2, something like that, to where they're probably giving up 2 or 3 points out of it. Kedrian Johnson had 5 turnovers last night, and with him going 0 for 3, 0 for 4, not playing good defensively, 5 turnovers can't happen from 3 different guards. I mean, it just can't happen.
Yeah, looking at the stats, it says Baylor forced 15 West Virginia turnovers. They got 17 points off those turnovers. You lose by 4. Math's pretty simple. You miss 9 free throws and your opponent gets 17 points off your turnovers. You can find your way to winning that game if you make your free throws and do what you have to do with the ball. Another thing I want to get to now is just looking at the Big 12 standings. Obviously, Kansas and Baylor at the top. Texas, Texas Tech, TCU, Iowa State, Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Kansas State round out your 10 there. West Virginia, it's looking more and more likely they're going to have to play a day 1 game in the Big 12 championship. And I would argue that's not the worst thing in the world, especially say West Virginia wins, 4 games, 5 games the rest of the way. If you can get one of those extra games, and when you're probably going to be playing a tournament caliber or a fringe tournament team, and you can beat them possibly in Kansas City, I think that goes a much longer way than, say, you get the first bye, you get a bye, but then you go lose to one of these teams. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts on that are, WVU's got to get, like you said, 4 or 5 more to where, they're on the bubble watch or something like that. I definitely think they're going to be in a day 1 game in the Big 12 tournament. So if you win one,
weird. I think it's happened once. I think in 2019 it was that team after JC and Dax. That team obviously struggled all year, but they were in the first round game, but they kind of made some noise there. But historically speaking, Hugs' teams haven't had to go play that day 1 game. And it could work out to West Virginia's favor. It could be, okay, this is another opportunity, an extra game, you could say. Because say they win that game and then win the next one, that's an extra win on your resume that you would not have gotten otherwise.
Yeah, first of all, they got to win 4 or so more regular season games. But yeah, going back to that team after JC and Dax, that team struggled all year. Guys got kicked off the team. Hugs gave the team to the freshmen, McCabe, Matthews, Culver, those guys. And they played Oklahoma day 1, won at the end, had to play Texas Tech, who made the national championship, won that game, but they had already done so much damage to themselves in the regular season that they had no shot at that point. But if you're looking at this Mountaineer team, if they win 4 or 5 more games and go into that day 1 game, make some noise, face a Kansas or somebody like that in day 2 and get some more momentum, then if they were to somehow make the tournament, that puts them being dangerous. That puts them being hot and stuff like that. So it is an opportunity. Yeah.
look at it. That 2010 Final Four team. They every Big East game that year in the Big East tournament came down to the wire, and they ended up making it to the Final Four. I think obviously it's not about how good you are in March; it's about how hot you get.
Yeah, that 2010 team, it's always going to be hard. They made the Final Four in the first game of the Big East tournament. They had to win on a Deshaun Butler buzzer beater. They barely beat Notre Dame the next game, and then they beat Georgetown in the Big East championship. So WVU, it's just always competitive. Like looking back to last year, I thought the Mountaineers were a great team last year, but they lose a game they probably shouldn't have lost at home against Oklahoma State, which puts them in the 3-4 game, and then they lose the first game of the Big 12 tournament. So now at that point, you got no momentum going into the NCAA tournament. You draw Morehead State, who's not very good. You beat them, but you can't get past that. So gaining some heat in conference tournament games are so vital.
And it's even more vital when your team relies on the shooting of two guys who carry your team, and you need them to be hot to carry your team. One thing I want to take a look at as we kind of just speculate around Big 12 tournament conversation is I don't think that West Virginia is too far off of possibly making a run in Kansas City. And that's because they've seemed to play everyone close, with the exception of Kansas, obviously, who they still get another crack at the Coliseum on a Saturday night. And what they announced this week will be a sold out crowd. And that I bet that atmosphere will be electric. The Mountaineers have hung with everyone in the Big 12. Texas, they lose by 15. All right, didn't have Gabe and Taz. Taz is there, okay. Gabe there. Totally different ball game. Kansas State wins. Oklahoma State wins. Kansas, we already talked about. Baylor at home hangs with them late. Baylor last night hangs with them late. Texas Tech hangs with them until late. Oklahoma hangs with them until late. Arkansas, not in the Big 12 tournament. Doesn't matter. But these losses, it's not like West Virginia's going out there and losing by 20 every night and then making it close at the end. It's close, run out of gas. And if this team starts stringing together wins, gets that confidence that, all right, crunch time, it's not going to fall apart. It's going to happen for us. Who knows what then that could translate into in the Big 12 tournament when you've had a lot of your roster, a lot of your big-time guys, Gabe, Sean, Taz, JB, playing these types of games, playing these tournaments before. And I think that could be a positive going into Kansas City.
Yeah, at this point in the year, you need those type of wins, 6-game losing streak, but they showed us that they've got a lot of fight left. They've still got talent, and they can put a run together. At this point, that was a great effort, but they got to take it a step further and just play even better, because once you get into late February, March, you got to play great. You got to get hot. You need some breaks. Well, if you're WVU, breaks don't exist. That's not a thing. So you got to step it up another degree to go steal that game in Waco, to beat a top 15 team in the Coliseum, because you're not going to get breaks either way. So you got to just elevate yourself even higher and get some traction once you get to Kansas City.
Yep. And I think that has to start with Saturday. Texas Tech, a game where things were close, where you had a chance if you're West Virginia for a minute there. I think that's going to be must win. With or without Taz, you've got to figure out how to make it work. Because what I'm going to say about this team is all they need is one. If this team can see the ball go in the back of the net, this team can see themselves getting stops. This team, sorry, there's a loud police presence on my street outside right now. There we go. All right. Back to what I was saying. Sorry, guys. If this team can see the ball go through the back of the net, step up on defense, just do the things that they have to do to win, and then they finally get to win, and they get to win in front of their home crowd. They get to sing Country Roads, the whole nine. I think once they do that, that kind of gets the ball rolling. Because if you saw it, even it going back to their non-conference schedule, although it wasn't against all these high caliber teams, you beat Oakland in your opener. Then you kind of beat Pitt. Then you kind of get the ball rolling there and beat Elon. All right, you drop one to Marquette, but then they responded.
Yeah.
And we've been waiting on to see how this team will respond. They're facing the most adversity most of these guys have faced in their 3 years here. Sean McNeil, Tyler Sherman gave us one. They've been on good teams for the most part the last 2 years. And it's just now going to be a matter of they've shown they can pick themselves off the mat against Baylor, but can they pick themselves up and then win the fight is going to be what makes or breaks this team. And I'm not counting them out yet. I tweeted last night, this last 6.5 minutes might define their season. Obviously they lost, but you still have everything's still in your control. If you start winning games, if you take care of home court and then go steal 2 games on the road, you're in March, you're where you need to be, and you're giving yourselves a shot.
Yeah, losing 6 straight at this point puts you in a lot of trouble, but they've still got an opportunity. They played a great game last night. They scored the ball. They had scoring from the 2 scores they needed to get going. Against Texas Tech, you're going to have to get that back. You're going to have to get those guys involved, but you're going to have to play defense to match Texas Tech's defense. Texas Tech has a swarming defense. You just know the Mountaineers aren't going to make 11 threes. And if Taz is out, it's such a tall task, but they have to bring that offense there to where it's enough. And then they have to somewhat match Texas Tech's defense. Just they got to play. If they can see the ball go in consistently like they did against Baylor and get that win against Texas Tech, then that's going to give them confidence for Iowa State. Iowa State's a really good team, but they've got some holes. They lost at home to TCU by 15. If WVU beats Texas Tech, then I agree with you. I think they'll get the ball rolling. They got to get that win regardless of Taz Sherman's status, and that's a tough ask, but it's got to get done.
The one positive I will say about Texas Tech is they're going to be playing their most emotional game of the year tonight. They welcome Chris Beard back into town, and it's kind of giving me a little goosebumps just thinking about it. It's just that he did so much. He transformed that program in so many ways. And now Texas Tech's going to want to go out there and beat the absolute brakes off their coach, who completely just left. He left them. He left his players for the most part. He left what they had built, being a Final Four team. He left that to go to the same state, same conference, and to play for Texas. I'm looking at it now. Tickets on StubHub. It's 5 o'clock. I think the game's at 7 or 8, and they're $300. Texas Tech's going to have an emotional game tonight. And if they win that, I think that even if they lose that, they're going to put everything and exhaust all energy into Tuesday tonight. And that could kind of lean and then in favor of West Virginia on Saturday.
Yeah, here's my thoughts on that. I, along with many other W fans, do not root for Texas. But tonight I will be rooting for Texas because if Texas Tech loses that game, they want to beat Chris Beard so bad. So bad. So if they lose that game, that super emotional game, maybe, just maybe, they'll let that game beat them twice, and they'll come into Morgantown and let that game beat them twice. We've seen WVU do that a million times in football and basketball. They get that emotional game in Morgantown. They're so close, they lose, and then they go somewhere and lose a game they shouldn't lose and let that game beat them twice. So hopefully that scenario could happen. If they go in there tonight and beat Texas like a drum.
If they beat Texas by 20, it could be scary.
If they beat Texas like a drum, then unfortunately WVU is going to be in some trouble.
Yeah, and I think emotional games, we kind of overlook them and we don't put as much stock into them as we used to. And I think having no crowds for the last season, for the most part, obviously some places were a little different than others. Think and say what you want about that. Having no crowds for the most part for these athletes, I think now that they get 14,000, 15,000, some places you're going to get 17 plus. When you get these crowds, it's like, all right, it's go time. But then how do you respond after that when you could be playing in the Coliseum in a 2/3 full Coliseum on a Saturday afternoon after you just played on national television in the game every single person in college basketball was talking about that night? And how it's just a feeling, these guys are young. They're 19, 20, 21 years old, and emotions run high. And I just feel like there's a lot of people that overlook how big games affect these kids and affect these players and even affect these coaches. Because if you're Texas Tech and you're Mark Adams, you're thinking to yourself, I sat under this man for years. This is my shot to beat the guy who made me who made my career almost.
Yeah.
And so I hate to kind of say West Virginia is going to win or lose based on Tuesday night's result. But I mean, it could give a clear indication, especially when you're desperate and when you're trying to find hope wherever you can get it. I think Texas beating Texas Tech could bring some hope.
Yeah, it shouldn't be overlooked. Basketball is an incredibly emotional game. Even dating back to last year when there weren't many fans, like WVU played Baylor, ended up winning the national championship. WVU was right there. Missed a couple free throws late. Meyer went off.
Wasn't that game like a 99-94 fest or something
Overtime.
like that? Yeah.
Overtime. Such an emotional game. They're right there. They needed one stop to win in regulation. They didn't get it. They lose in overtime. That's tough. They play a bad TCU team and come out and barely play, and then they play Oklahoma State and don't show up and lose. I just feel like that Baylor game last year beat the Mountaineers 2 or 3 different times instead of just beating them once, and then they had no momentum for March Madness. So you definitely can't overlook the aspect of how emotional this game is, and there wasn't even much of a crowd aspect in that. It's just an emotional game for these kids.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and West Virginia lost to Baylor 94-89 in overtime. And then after that, West Virginia beat TCU. But if you remember, that was the game where Jalen Bridges had to basically pick this team up.
Nobody else showed up.
And then just will this team to victory. And then following that, West Virginia loses an emotional game in itself. It would have been Bob Huggins' 900th win at home in front of West Virginia faithful. Couldn't get it done.
No Cade Cunningham in that game either. Yeah. They still lost.
Yeah, they lose that one by 5. Then they go to the Big 12 tournament, lose to Oklahoma State by 3. Then they kind of struggled sometimes. I was never in doubt of West Virginia beating Morehead State, but there was never a time where I felt, okay, West Virginia's got them beat by 20, 25, 30. It was kind of like they're kind of just – it's not Morehead State keeping themselves in the game. It was West Virginia keeping Morehead State in the game. And then it was then they lost to Syracuse. So you could see how one tough loss, one emotionally just where everything happens, where it's back and forth, things are crazy, you're playing such a good team, how that can kind of take things off the rails. And maybe in a tough Big 12, where your team has already struggled if you're West Virginia, maybe that happens to another couple teams. Mountaineers can catch some breaks and sneak into March.
Yeah, it trickles down when you lose that emotional game. I've seen it a million times with WVU teams, even football. You just lose that game and it trickles down and beats you again. So hopefully WVU can be on the other end of that this year. Even if it's not a Texas Tech situation, WVU needs to be that team that steals the game because maybe a team just got over an emotional loss, or WVU is now the team that has nothing to lose, and teams that have nothing to lose can be dangerous. So hopefully WVU steps into that role, and they still got a lot to play for, but hopefully they can take advantage of a team losing an emotional game.
Yeah, you bring up football real quick, and obviously it's February 1st. Couple of things that broke in the West Virginia football world in the last day or so. Obviously, yesterday was announced, if you have missed it, that West Virginia's road games against Pitt and Virginia Tech this upcoming season are being moved from Saturdays to Thursdays. Pitt, which was originally scheduled for September 3rd, now going to be played on September 1st, Thursday night, primetime. Probably one of those opening marquee games, national television opening the season. And then Virginia Tech, moving from the 24th of September to the 22nd of September. Your thoughts, Aaron, on what this could mean? I'm a little unhappy as a fan who's rooted for this team and as someone who likes this team that obviously I feel like, okay, West Virginia had a noon kick at home last year against Virginia Tech, and now Virginia Tech gets a marquee time slot. I also think it's going to be a little hard for fans. That was my first reaction. I obviously Pitt is one thing. I think everyone and their grandma's going to go show up to Heinz Field because that's going to be Morgantown North on the 1st of September. But a couple weeks later in Blacksburg, I think it's going to be a lot. There would have been more Mountaineer fans, I'll say, if it was on a Saturday compared to now being on a Thursday night.
Yeah, Thursday night, it's like, Thursday night makes you feel like you're in the AAC or, the
Feels back like the Big East days is what it really feels
Yeah, Big East football playing on Wednesday and Thursday night. But they're marquee matchups. They're early in the season where there's a lot of Saturday games that need to be on prime time. So I can see it happening. I don't think it matters much for Pitt. Pitt's going to be a crazy environment no matter what day you play it on. Keon Slovis coming in for Pitt. Pitt hasn't played WVU since 2011, the Orange Bowl year. So that game's going to be crazy either way. Virginia Tech, I think, is a little bit of a wild card because they have such a great environment at Lane Stadium. And yeah, like you said, if it was a Saturday, I think more Mountaineer fans would have showed up. If you're talking about Morgantown, it's about a 4-hour drive, but southern part of the state, West Virginia residents can make that trip easy. Virginia Tech, maybe looking at Grant Wells being their starter from Marshall University, GW High School. So there's going to be a lot of motion in those two games, and I think that them being moved to Thursday is just, I don't think it matters as much. I think they're both going to be crazy games, and I think they're both going to get good Mountaineer turnouts.
I think the Pitt game is going to be a much harder victory than Virginia Tech. Just how things are shaking up right now. Virginia Tech, new coach, new quarterback. Pitt, new quarterback, same system, same coach. Pitt won
Offensive coordinator resigned though, didn't he?
I believe so. I think you're right. Obviously not a Pitt football guru by any means, but I think Neil Brown's going to have. He's either going to be safely secure by September 23rd, or he's going to be on the hottest of hot seats by September 23rd. The other piece of football news I want to get to real quick is today it was announced that the Gold Blue Spring Game will be on Saturday, April 23rd at 1 o'clock. And with a quarterback battle comes the intrigue of a spring game. And obviously, it's shaping up to be a Garrett Green, Nico Marchiol, and Goose Crowder quarterback competition. But I think fans are going to turn out because these fans are hungry. They know they've got two big-time rivalry games this year. They know they've got to start making noise. They know they've got a defense that's got Dante Stills, Josh Chandler coming back. They've got guys on the defensive side, Akeem Mesidor, one of the better coordinators in the country, in the country too. And so I think the hype around the spring game will be solely around the quarterback position. What do you think?
Agreed. Me and plenty of other people want to see what these quarterbacks got. I'm high on Nico Marchiol. A lot of other people are. I'm intrigued by Goose Crowder. Neil talked about him a lot, playing good in their Friday Night Lights scrimmages. Monday night, rather. Yep. We just didn't see him. So, but I've heard a lot of good things about him. So, I don't necessarily want him transferring if he's good, but I want the best guy to go out there and win the job. Hopefully Nico can step up and just take the team and put him on his back. But it's going to be super interesting. You got two so important rivalry games that haven't happened over the last few years. I just don't – if you lose both of those, if you lose to Pitt and Virginia Tech, I don't see how a coach can not get fired from that. So two big games. I think they're going to be so entertaining.
Yep, and I think that's why we talk about football in the middle of winter is because of the hype and the drama and the everything that comes with it. One more thing going back to Baylor, West Virginia that we forgot to do, game balls. Taz Sherman, definitely no question about it. James Akinjo, definitely no question about it. And I'm going to give Matthew Meyer game ball. And before you get on me, Aaron, and before you call me crazy, he scored 9 points, but he scored the most meaningful 9 points that his team needed him to score, and he scored them at the most critical time. And when you do that, and you give, he willed them to a win. And when you score those 9 points late, when it matters most, that is how I think in my book you get a game ball. And so that's why I think obviously Sherman, Akinjo, but Matthew Meyer, game ball for me.
I'm gonna go Taz Sherman, pretty easily. He played his rear end off. He needed that, and it sucked how it worked out. I thought Taz should have been the one making the shots towards the end.
I felt like I agree. Last night I should have been writing my story recap saying Taz Sherman scores 35. West Virginia goes on the road, turns their season around, beats the number 8 team in the country. Yeah. Instead, I wrote Taz Sherman was off the floor for the last 3 minutes and 28 seconds or whatever it was, and West Virginia then lost 81-77.
Yeah, I've got a lot of admiration for what Taz did. He's been struggling, then turn the ball over, and he goes out there and competes, makes shots, gets hit in the jaw, and nothing happens. And now he's looking at a concussion. So game ball to Taz. I don't really care about anybody else.
All good. And while I got you here, Texas Tech, Texas, you got to give me a prediction.
It's in Lubbock, right?
It's gonna be crazy. Yeah, it's in Lubbock. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They are ready from what I've heard.
Texas Tech. Texas beat Tennessee by 1? It's a good win, but weren't they up like 13 or 14 with like a few minutes to go? Almost completely lost against Tennessee, just barely squeaked by, and didn't even score 60. I don't think. I got Texas Tech. It's gonna be a ruckus in that place. Mark Adams is gonna come out and have his guys ready.
Give me Texas. And
okay.
Texas has talent. They have elite talent, and just as bad as Mark Adams and Texas Tech wants to win this game, I would bet you everything I've got Chris Beard wants to win it even more. Chris Beard wants to go back, beat his former assistant, beat his former team, and he wants to prove that he made the right decision. Because if he loses, there is going to be the doubt in his mind of, why did I do this? Because Texas before the year was a top 5 team in the country. They plummeted out of the top 25. They're back in it now. But if you lose the team that you left on your own, it's not like they fired you. It's not like you were forced out. You chose to leave. And so if you lose to that team, I just think that sends his team down a path that could be detrimental to their season.
Yeah, it's also important to note, not saying the move wasn't slimy, but Chris Beard did go to Texas, UT Austin. I think he graduated from there. Yep. So, but still, you're right. They're a talented team. If it can make Texas, if they can get an emotional win against Texas Tech and make Texas Tech, take us lightly, I'll take it.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. That's for sure, as a college basketball fan. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch, obviously, the developments that happen with Taz Sherman, the developments that happen just with this West Virginia team as a whole. They need Saturday. We've been saying they need a game for, 2 weeks now, and they haven't gotten one. Losers of 6 straight just isn't as pretty, even if you're getting moral victories from the outside. So you got anything else for me, partner?
Nope. I think WVU is going to come out and play good against Texas Tech. I don't know if they're going to win or not, but we're going to see a lot of effort from them down the stretch.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to tell you. I love your JB prediction, man. It's fallen flat on its face twice in a row. In a row, you've been high on JB and he's fallen flat. I don't know. You might got to change your go-to guy there.
Take my predictions with a grain of salt. What's my record in Big 12 games?
I don't know. I don't have that record in front of me, but I'm not sure I want to see mine either. But that's everything we got for you today. If you made it this far, we really do appreciate you listening. I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Aaron Parker, and we will come back with a Texas Tech preview podcast probably around Friday Hopefully the Mountaineers get some good news on Taz Sherman before then. Hopefully they get some good news in general, just in general. I mean, they're dying for anything good at this point. So West Virginia loses to Baylor Monday night, 81-77. Now loses 6 straight, sitting at second to last in the Big 12 Conference. February 1st, got a month of basketball left, and the Mountaineers are going to have to play their butts off. They want to make some noise in March. So Wesley Shoemaker, Aaron Parker, it's the BlueGoldSports.com podcast, and thank you for listening.